Recording.
Yes, perfect. I will wait for 30 more seconds before we start the event. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I am Shiba Vasudevan, President of ITE Hamilton Session. Thank you for being with us today and welcome to our third virtual speaker event of this year. Before we begin, may I request everyone to please mute your microphones? Thank you. Today's speaker event will be divided into two parts. The first part will include a presentation on the benefits of proactive road safety programs on liability risk. This will be jointly presented by Josée Dumont and Alexander Nolet, both from True North Safety Group. After the presentation, we will open the floor to questions on the presentation for 10 to 15 minutes. We have added some fun component to the second part of this speaker event, which will include a trivia game on transportation and traffic. We will be playing this game using Kahoot. I will explain the rules to play the game after the Q&A session. With that, let's move on to the first part of this event, and I will welcome José and Alex to go ahead with your presentation. Let's go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you very much for the introduction. Let me just, okay, so you should see my screen now. Excellent. Well, hello everyone. Thanks a lot for taking the time to attend this virtual event. I don't know about you, but it's getting more and more difficult for me to have the motivation of attending the virtual events. I kind of looking forward to the days that we get back in person, but we really appreciate for you to take the time today. So at True North Safety Group, we investigate collisions and determine if the roadway environment was a contributing factor to a collision. So this means that, when we get involved, or at least from a forensic perspective, it is too late in the sense that the collision has already occurred. But, while this collision investigation work is reactive by nature, it sheds lights on some gaps in our practice and puts us in a good position to kind of determine the type of road safety programs that could have prevented a collision from happening, which is what we'll be talking about today. So the benefits of some proactive road safety programs on liability risk and also on improving safety in general. So this is our presentation outline. We'll introduce True North Safety Group for those that are not familiar. And then we'll cover 3 case studies. Each case study consists of a legal matter that we were involved in, which will be followed by the description of a road safety program that could have addressed the identified safety issues and minimize the liability risk. So the first case study will be the new Desire line. And then, the road safety program is safety reviews at the site application stage. Case study number 2 will be the no delineation, no good, and the systemic safety projects. The third one will be trucks need space, and we'll discuss about road safety audits. So Josée will present case study number 1, and I will present the other 2. So just before Josée starts talking about the first one, introduction on TrueNote Safety Group. It was founded in 2017. We're a consulting and forensic engineering firm dedicated to transportation safety. We are 3 senior transportation safety engineers, and we're actively involved in the transportation community, including ITE, CARSP, OGRA, CIT, OTC, CUDA, and others. We have developed and presented a number of workshops, which you may have attended mainly through OTC in the recent past, and hopefully we'll resume that pretty soon. So I will let Josée present the first case study.
Hi, everyone. So this first case study is discussing the safety reviews at the site application stage. So first, we're looking at a liability case that our firm looked at. And this was after there was no safety study done when the application stage was ongoing. So at this location, there's been a new development that was to the left of the picture taken. And this development included 2 condo towers. So a lot more people in the area generated by this development, including pedestrians. There's also transit stops located along the north-south roadway, so one on either side, one being on the near side for the condo development and one being on the other side. Those transit stops are located about 100 meters north of a signalized intersection. So that's within the guidelines in terms of spacing. And the expectation would then be that the pedestrians would walk to the intersection, cross, and then walk back to the transit stop. Because of the increased demand, there was also, that new desire line to get to that transit stop, and it ended up with pedestrians crossing mid-block and not doing that pedestrian detour, that walk to the intersection and back. And unfortunately, one of the pedestrians that was crossing got hit in the northbound lanes. Alex, if you can move to the next one. So looking at it from a street level, we see that clear desire line in daylight between the 2 transit stops. So obviously, going somewhere and coming back, you'd be on one side and then the other. And we also see that in the evening, under nighttime conditions, there's low lighting level. If you look to the right of the screen, there's particularly true where that transit stop is. It's in a darker area than the rest of the roadway. So if there had been a safety review at the development application stage, those are things that could have been noticed. And things that could have changed would be better lighting conditions, especially where that darker area is, or moving the transit stop closer to the intersection so that it's not that much of a detour to get to the intersection to cross with the right-of-way. So another study we were involved in, this one was at the site application stage. We actually got involved before the TIS was started. So we got approached by a developer. They're looking to put a new multi-use development in that green space in the middle of the screen. And they started talking with the municipality and were told that they needed to investigate safety because the municipality didn't think that they would allow it the way that it was going to go. So the developer was not able to purchase the 3 houses on the right side of their site. And the municipality was pointing to them moving their driveway access to this side street as opposed to the minor collector that's going kind of northeast and then east. but that's something that was they were unable to do. So when they approached us, they were looking at specifically site distances from the property access, but also at a safety study for, back up please, Alex, safety study for the area that we see. We were not involved, our area did not include the signalized intersection that you see to the left of the screen, but it involved the rest of those intersections. So it's a bit of an awkward location where there's this triangle and there's this little green space in the middle of that triangle. There's this one-way street on the north side of that green space, which is basically just grass and a couple trees. And then there's intersections, there's roadways that are at different angles. So not everything is north, south, and east, west. You can move on to the next one now. So when we got to the site, we were able to see that at the proposed access, the departure site distances were currently just on the edge. They were meeting, but not completely. There's a couple of things that could become obstructions. And when we started and we looked at the proposed plans, the preliminary plans by the architects, we also saw that the building where it was going to be, what they were proposing, was also going to impede those site distances. So Alex, if you can move to the next one. We also looked at collision history in that study area. And we saw that for most of the intersections, it was fine. However, that intersection just east of the site had a history of 15 collision. I think that was in a 6-year period. But what we saw was that all of those 15 collisions were angle collisions, and they all involved a northbound vehicle. They were approximately evenly distributed between involving an eastbound or a westbound vehicle with the northbound vehicle. And they were all included either that the northbound driver failed to obey the traffic control or failed to yield the right of way. And none of those indicated that the environmental conditions were a factor. We also looked at a speed study that had been done previously already, and with a 50-kilometer-an-hour speed limit on that collector, the 85th percentile speeds were at 49 kilometers an hour in both directions. So that there was no issues of speed, at least on that collector. When we got to the site, we also saw that this collector is going right, but as you're going northbound, eastbound, there's this street that's oncoming to you, and that's the straight path. So there's that skewed intersection that's in a curve. This straight path is actually a one-way opposite the drivers going eastbound. So the markings were faded, but the do not enter signs were visible. And then the intersection just east of that, there was a control difference between, so the drivers that are going northbound and southbound, they encountered two intersections very closely spaced. And these two intersections, at one they have to stop, and at the other one they don't have to stop. So stay on this one, Alex, please. So looking at that intersection just east of the site, we saw that traffic approaching eastbound had a poor view of vehicles stopped at the northbound stop sign. We also saw that the northbound vehicles had a obstructed sight line to the west due to that fence on the corner property. And then when we did the site visit, it was clear to the east, but where that arrow is, there's on-street parking. So as soon as you add those parked vehicles, it would significantly reduce the visibility as well. So we're able to provide recommendations for the study area, not only the site. And the modifications that our recommendations included some modifications to the minor collector to reduce the pavement width and then slightly realign it to the north. So it was fairly wide. And so we included to have those done either in a permanent basis with reconstruction, or on a shorter term to have it with markings and delineators to adjust the lanes so that drivers are going a little bit more to the north of that paved right-of-way. We also recommended that the grass or landscaping be kept very low on that south side, and that to add a sidewalk on the north side. For the skewed intersection, we recommended that they close the one-way completely and extend the park. So there's a little park just north, and then to extend that green space into this triangular green space that is not really accessible in the middle of that space. And then alternately, if they did not want to close that road completely, because it does provide some on-street parking, that they do a partial closure at the intersection so that there's only the one southwest-bound lane, and then that there's a crossing at this that's installed at the pedestrian crossing installed at that intersection as well. For the intersection to the east, where there was that history of collisions, we recommended some curb extensions on all four corners, moving the stop signs for the northbound and southbound traffic closer, like on those curb extensions, so they're closer to the lane, and to refresh the pavement markings and add pedestrian crosswalks for the north and south legs. We also recommended modifications to the ground floor of the development so that that corner that was impeding the visibility be cut back on the ground floor. There's nothing above the ground floor. They were able to cantilever it and go with that design. So all of those recommendations at that site application stage or pre-site application stage, they help improve the safety for the site and for the area. They also are helping with so the architects now are planning to have use that opportunity to urbanize the area as well. And our recommendations are helping providing better pedestrian connections. That project is currently still in the approval process, but by being assessed early on, we're able to see some wins for the developers because they will likely be able to go forward with their project, and some wins for the municipalities because safety will be improved for the area as well.
Excellent.
Back to you, Alex.
Perfect. Thanks, Jose. Well, this is a great example that, when safety is assessed at the site application process or as early as possible, there can be some significant safety benefits for sure. All right, so our case study number 2, no delineation, no good. So this is the type of collision that we get involved quite often, so in this case, it was a motorcyclist traveling southbound on Centerline Road, and the motorcyclist approached the curve on the approach to the lower road, and unfortunately never made it through and lost control and exited the roadway and hit, I believe, a tree. So I'll show you another the other from the street level. So we had a narrow 2-lane roadway with a number of vertical and horizontal curves. The motorcyclist lost control where the one chevron is installed. At the time of the collision, it wasn't visible. It was hidden behind vegetation. So there was really a lack of curve delineation, meaning pavement marking, warning signs, chevrons, those kind of things. And only then this is the second picture to the right. The one to the right is only when you get to the curve itself that you realize that it turns to the left just before the intersection. So, conclusion was that the reduced visibility, the absence of pavement markings, the absence of curve warning signs, and the chevrons were all factors that increased the risk of a loss at the loss of control at the subject location. So in this case, I mean, collisions on rural roads often represent for like a high percentage of severe collisions, but their density is relatively low compared to like an urban environment. And what it does is that does not necessarily lead to identify collision issues or locations of concern within the traditional site-specific analysis process. So the one to the left that you see, that's kind of the traditional one where we do a network screening, identify higher risk locations or sites, and then do some analysis at those locations to determine what can be done. So there is some evidence that indicates that severe collisions actually are widely distributed across road network, and very few individual locations in rural areas and on local system experience a high number of severe collisions. So road authorities have trouble meeting their safety performance goals by only investing in high collision locations. So some systemic deployment, so the one you see to the right, is kind of needed, and some agencies are implementing this approach more and more, where the focus is on a specific type of a collision type, or a type of remedial measures that is planned on being implemented, and determining where it should be done, and then prioritizing in that kind of approach. So basically what we want is to identify location where, like the case study that we discuss, where there isn't any delineation, and determining what can be done at this locations. But the thing is, with large road network, is where do we start? Due to resource constraints and other priorities, municipalities are kind of left reviewing individual horizontal curve location when a complaint or a collision is received. So there are solutions, and this is, the systemic safety projects are one of the solution that can help minimize the costs of these studies, because it's all, when you for this type of project, it's all about the methodology that you develop and apply, and there's a lot of work that goes beforehand. But when you apply the same methodology to each site, and because of the repetitive nature of the reviews, you can become very effective and complete assignments of large road network under reasonable budgets. Just want to briefly discuss about, a large project that we completed for the region of Alton. So a high number of kilometers of roadway in the region of Alton, and the goal was to evaluate and identify horizontal curve traffic control device deficiencies and remedial measures. So we essentially need to determine if the curve warning signs and chevrons in place complied with OTM Book 6, and we need to travel all of the roadways and flag whether safety deficiencies existed. So definitely needed a good methodology in place, otherwise that you would just get lost. So the methodology that was used was essentially to create inventory of existing curve locations, prepare some forms that would be used for each location, undertook a field investigation using electronic video ball bank readings, compared the existing location to the guidance provided in the OTM book, and summarized the recommended changes and produced work orders for the implementation. So this is what was collected on site. This is the electronic ball bank that was used. It's all GPS reference, and it can be looked at later on for each curve to determine what kind of readings were measured. And then essentially the deliverable, well, there were 4 key deliverables for the project, but so an inventory of the existing curves, the curve assessment summary forms, the ball bank videos, and work orders. So that was very helpful for the city because they would, for the region, because they would get a work order that summarized what's existing, what kind of signs are in place, and what has to be done to comply with OTM book 6 in this case. And this type of approach, or this systemic type of approach, can be done or used for other areas. Here there are three examples. It could be done for, determining your sight lines, if there are any sight lines issues at any intersection, so the departure, approach, side distance. The picture in the middle, that's skewed. That's a skewed intersection. This type of project that we completed for both the city of Ottawa and the region of Durham, where they identified all of their skewed intersections on their road network, and we did a comprehensive review of each of them and tried to determine from a risk perspective which one should be addressed first. And to the right, roadside clear zone, so to provide provision of recovery area. So we did a similar project for Caledon, where we travel all of their rural roadways and determine where guide rails should be installed. In urban environment too, trail crossings. These are locations where you don't necessarily have high levels or high number of collisions, so they wouldn't necessarily rise to the top of a network screening. But that type of analysis, the systemic approach, can be useful, or a school crossing, the same thing. So that's for case study number 2. I'll go to the third one, third and last. So trucks need space. This is a major case I was involved in, I think 3 years ago. That's in Quebec, south shore of Montreal. And you see there's a major industrial park near an urban community. And what happened here is there was a large number of trucks that were traveling through town to then go to Montreal or other locations. Other locations in the area. So they would either travel through the downtown or near a residential neighborhood. So these were the 2 options they had before, and then in green, that was a no truck route. But the approach or the reasoning for the change kind of made sense. You didn't want all those trucks traveling through dense urban environment. So they made a change, and they changed the truck route, so they would use the green routes. So they're more of a rural environment. So that was all reasonable of an approach. But here we're talking about approximately 1,000 truck per day, and large trucks, not single unit, but pretty large trucks that were or would be now using new roadways. And this is one of the intersection, which was, that's why we were retained, is to look specifically at this intersection. And it is a T intersection that is a stop control. The southwest to northeast roadway, that's a provincial road. It's 90 kilometers posted speed. There is also a signed bicycle route on this roadway. This is a street level. These are the previous conditions. You see, it was still a no truck route. So what happened here is there was a traffic impact study that was done, and it was kind of a light version of a traffic impact study, even if it had major impact on truck traffic on this roadway. And it essentially looked at, whether there should be turning lanes. And so they looked at the left turn warrant, and they also did auto turn analysis to see if trucks could make the turn or not. So that was pretty much the extent of the safety evaluation or assessment that was done to determine the type of configuration that should be installed at this location. There was no field investigation done, nothing like that. So yeah, some of the key transportation safety aspect that the traffic impacts did not evaluate. So sight lines, some of the interactions between truck traffic and vulnerable road users, positive guidance review, roadside safety. There's all kinds of things that weren't evaluated or assessed at that stage. So you see to the left, these are the before conditions, and to the right, the after conditions. So essentially, the main change was that there was a short taper that was added on that eastbound approach. And it was a little bit of a wider, bigger, or a larger intersection. So that's essentially the changes that were made. So if I have some examples of, what it looks like at the moment or after construction, and just to give you a kind of a sense of some of the safety issues that they're now dealing with at this location, especially with trucks turning at the location and being in conflicts with some vulnerable road users and other vehicles. So we'll see a truck making a left turn from the stop control approach, and we have cyclists riding on the shoulder. And you can see, the trucks, and most of the trucks are kind of impeding or encroaching onto the shoulder, and you could imagine, and also vehicles passing. I forgot about that. My focus was on the cyclists, but yeah, so you've got conflicts with cyclists, and the trucks don't necessarily have the proper space or dedicated space to pick up speed and impatient motorists. So that's one example. I think I've got another video for you. Oh, that's the same. That's the second one here. So you can see very large trucks. Pretty common type of conflicts at this location. So it clearly created conditions that were uncomfortable, to say the least, for all road users. The trucks, it's not easy to make that. The truck operator, not easy to make that turn. And for cyclists, which are, they were quite a few cyclists traveling on this shoulder. It's called La Route Verte. So for recreational cycling, it's very popular. So definitely not a good situation there. So, the previous belief, so designing safe transportation facilities consisted of meeting design standards, operational policies, and road authority practices. And now, I mean, to ensure the highest levels of safety that are achieved, there needs to be an understanding of the implication of each planning and design decision. So we can no longer accept designs that barely meet design standards. Our knowledge on road safety has significantly increased and is constantly evolving. And if we want to achieve Vision Zero or the goals of Vision Zero, we need to have qualified safety people reviewing the drawings of new transportation facilities. Otherwise, we will continue to make the same mistakes, build them, and pay a lot of money to fix them afterwards. So this is really a good example of a design that barely met the minimum design requirements, where no consideration on safety, and it created high risk conditions, where no road users is comfortable traveling through it. So the main barriers to road safety audits are cost. It's often perceived as a very expensive type of project. Delays, it takes time to complete, and the design team doesn't necessarily like this extra step. Complexity, there are a number of people involved, and it's only for large transportation projects. But the question is, not the question, but it does not have to be. The key really is with road safety audit is who and when they're completed. So who you want, the qualified safety experts to do it. And, for simple projects, you don't necessarily need to have multidisciplinary teams. You just need to have the right people doing the analysis. And the when is also really important, where, on the planning and design stage, it's where you will save more money in the long term, because changing roadways or making modification to existing facilities, it's quite expensive. Making changes to drawings is not too bad. So this is kind of the perception that, for new freeways, that's when we should do those safety audits, which is very true. It can be done, and it should be done for those larger projects, but there's also great value in doing them for smaller projects, which more and more municipalities are requiring that to be done. And we see great benefit. Just, these are some examples, not necessarily where audits were done. There's some that at the bottom right, that was one of the audit we were involved in, but some of the safety issues, these are just examples of what we could identify during an audit. So, the top left, you've got a new bicycle facility where you've got fixed and permanent bollards very close to the bicycle facilities that can represent a hazard for them. You may recognize this one in Toronto, where you had a bicycle facility, a separated bicycle facility, and then you get to a loading zone, and then you have cyclists were required to merge onto adjacent the adjacent travel lane, and you also have a streetcar track, so that obviously create issues. At the top right, it's just a new roadway like we see in many locations, relatively wide, almost 10 meters cross section. You've got a trail that meets with this roadway, but there's no proper traffic control devices installed there. So I mean, I think they've actually fixed this at this location. And you know, here on the plan at the bottom, here you see a skewed intersection, and we know that, you know, the more skewed an intersection is, the higher the collision risk is, and there was no clear reason to have an intersection like this. It's just a road designer believe it was the right thing to do, but just by asking the question at the design phase, we said, well, is there really a need for this, and why is it skewed? Then it could be addressed, and it was addressed. So we probably save a few collisions right there. So yeah, we could go on and on providing some examples like this, but I think as closing remarks or as conclusion, our message is that we do not necessarily need elaborate strategies and or wait for new technologies to help us achieve the goals of Vision Zero and minimize liability risk. An effective approach is to systematically conduct safety reviews or audits in the early phases of each transportation project so that, you know, the glaring safety issues can be identified and addressed before they get constructed. So remember that transportation safety is, you know, relatively simple. So we essentially need proper connectivity, delineation, separation between road users when, you know, speed differential warrants it, and proper warning. So, you know, to ensure that these safety principles are implemented, we just need road safety to be systematically taken into account. And we believe that, you know, the three examples that we gave you today are some of the strategies that can help. They're definitely do not represent a complete list, but these can definitely be done and in a relatively short term and help. So thanks a lot for listening to us. Greatly appreciated, and I think it's the question period. If you have any questions.
Thank you, José and Alex. That was a wonderful presentation, and the case studies were very interesting. And I like the importance you put on the safety certification as well as the importance of safety during the planning stage. With that, we will open the floor to questions. To ask your questions, either raise your hand using the hand icon or please enter your questions in the chat box. Florine, did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, hi. Hello, everyone. This is Florin Potro here. I'm with the City of Burlington Transportation Department. Just a quick one. Thank you very much for putting all this together. It's amazing. I really like it. Is it possible for you to share the recording for this presentation? And will it be a problem if I can share it with my group? There are a few folks in my group that will definitely appreciate if you can make this available. Thank you.
So I'm assuming that it's the plan for it to become available, like the recording. And I mean, if you want the slides too, you can just send me an email, I guess.
The slides are great, but the entire presentation, the recording will be perfect because beside the information presented by slides, you emphasize with a lot of comments that I found it very valuable. I mean, at a minimum, the slides will be good, but it will be great if you can share the whole recording. And that's pretty much what I can ask. Thank you
Right.
so much again.
Pleasure.
Second question, Albert, could you please go ahead with your question?
Yes, good afternoon. I do really appreciate the presentation that True North gave us, very informative. Regarding, I have a technical question. I was looking at one of your screenshots, and there was a moment when you guys went out to the field and identified the horizontal and vertical curvatures. Will that was like a special software, or will that was like a cell phone app? Because it was really, to be honest, it was amazing. I've been doing this, but using a mechanical instrument, and it's difficult. And I'm wondering if you maybe can share that with us.
Yeah, no, that was done the good old way. It was with targets that we use on site. So one is set, based on, the tag requirements. So I think it's 0.38 meters above ground. So that's for the stopping sight distance. And we just moved the target to determine what is the available stopping sight distance at a location. But there are definitely other ways of doing it. Like you can scan the roadway with the Faro, like a 3D kind of a scanner, which is pretty neat. But on site with proper targets, that can also be done. So that's how it was done in this case.
Just a follow-up question, Albert. Are you talking about the ball banking for
Yes.
the Halton project? Okay, Alex, he's
Yeah,
talking
I'm
about
sorry.
the app for the ball bank.
Oh, I see. Yeah, okay, sorry, I didn't understand that. That's that's an app available on the Apple store, or that's FHWA. Yeah,
it will
I
be
can.
a ball banking app, right?
That's right. Yeah, you just mount in your vehicle, and you use your phone for it. It's a pretty neat one. There's a cost associated with it, but it's not major.
And again, I really appreciated this. I think traffic forensics is really important. And like you say, it's better to prevent prior the collisions happening, right? Like prevention is key. But for some reason, in our industry, I think in our industry they don't understand that concept. Only us traffic engineers, we can understand that there is key importance to prevent before the events takes place, because after the collision takes place, it's kind of already too late, right? Like we will doing the studies and then just trying to prevent the next collision to happen, right? So I do thank you,
Yes.
and yeah.
No, exactly, right. And it's, for most cases, it's not rocket science in terms of, what has to be done. It's just that it's not done. So there are ways of preventing that with
Yeah.
proper safety reviews or assessment done at the right time.
Thank you.
We have another question from Sandra Lucas. Sandra, please go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Sandra Lucas. I'm with Transportation Planning, City of Hamilton. These were great examples. Thank you. One of the things that I'm with the Transportation Planning Development Review team. So we review development applications. And one of the things that we regularly encounter is having a developer say it's an existing condition. Why should they have to spend any money to do a safety review when it's an existing condition? How would you suggest that we convince developers to pay for it? And how would you scope the review for a specific development? Have you got any thoughts on that?
It's a really good question, actually. Well, I mean, there's one thing that comes to mind is, I mean, their development will have an impact on safety. The more traffic you have, the more likelihood. More likely you increase the risk of having a collision. So they have a direct impact on safety. So there is a cost to that. More collision, more cost. That's the first thing. But what we've seen is and I don't know if it's probably the same in Hamilton, but some developers are becoming proactive in that sense, and I'm sure it's not the case for all of them. But in order to get the public on their side, they do those early on, those safety reviews. Just you've got public acceptance. That's easier, but that will probably take a while for the for all for all developers. So I don't know. Yeah, mainly their impact on collision is definitely something that I believe it's more of a point that we can tell them. I don't know if you got anything else, Josée.
Well, I would take the same approach as for traffic operations. There might already be issues in either or the operations or the safety, but by adding the development, they're going to increase those issues, or they will have an impact. It will have an impact by adding either residential or whatever. They'll add a demand for people to get to this location. So they will have an impact on safety. So I would treat it similarly. In the case that I showed, it was requested by the municipality before they would even consider the application.
Thank you very much for your response. I really appreciate it.
We have next question from Mark Ridley. Mark, please go ahead.
Hi, it's Mark Ridley from the City of London. On a tangent of some of the things you've been discussing, one of the other issues I think we need to start looking at is the expertise of the people who are working for municipalities and government and stuff who are supposedly out there doing the field, doing the inspections on some of the pavement markings and signs and stuff like that that are supposed to be in the field. And so a lot of these people have never even seen an OTM manual, yet they're the supposed experts that are doing the inspections on behalf of the. And I have you guys come across that issue in some of the cases that you've dealt with? Like, part of the reason why the municipality or government was held responsible is because the staff supposedly doing the inspections didn't have the required expertise or training.
Yes, absolutely. Especially road patrollers. I guess that's what you're referring to, or
That's exactly what I'm referring to.
Yeah. So they're pretty good at identifying where a puddle is, but knowledge of OTM book and how it can impact safety, it's not necessarily there. Yeah, there definitely needs to be more training. I think it is an important issue, and that's on us, I guess, reaching out to them to make sure they've got the proper training so they can identify safety issues. But yeah, there is definitely a need for that. And yeah, we do see it every. I shouldn't say every file that we're involved in, but a large number of them, a proportion of them, where they had a patroller traveling on the roadway, in the weeks or months or years before, and the issue was just never identified. And it's not that they didn't, they just didn't know that it was an issue that should be identified. So it is quite common, and hopefully we can address that.
We have a question from Margaret in the chat box. The question is, have municipalities seen any impact on insurance costs following implementation of a proactive systemic safety review?
Okay, let me just. Any impact? That's a really good question. I am not aware. Yeah, I don't know. Unfortunately, I don't know if it has an impact on the insurance cost. Do you know, Josée? Any or
No, I don't know either if they see a difference on their insurance cost. I would assume that logically, if there's a reduction of collisions, then there's a reduction in the cost for the litigation coming from those severe collisions afterwards. But I don't know if anybody is here from a municipality and would have an answer to that. I'm gonna guess not. But it's an interesting one. It's an interesting one.
Okay, let's move on to the next question. Mohan Philip, could you please go ahead with your question?
Okay, this is Mohan Philip from City of Hamilton. When I was seeing, that case study where the first one, where a bike, lost control and I think it was a fatal incident. While seeing that alignment of the road, to me, it felt that a good solution would have been a roundabout. And there are other locations also whether I'm not sure whether you have considered a roundabout from a safety perspective. And generally also in your, as an expert in safety, did you or would you consider roundabout as a solution to address the safety issue?
Yes, definitely. I mean, it is a good point. It is definitely something. Well, we often recommend that, even in rural environment, where you just eliminate that risk of an angle collisions, right? And also require, even if they want it or not, require them to slow down. So if that happens, you reduce severity of collisions as well. So the great safety benefits for sure. From a liability risk, in this case, it's not like we would have said we would have said, oh, the a roundabout, that was it should have been done and that's what should have been in place. We can say it is one of the treatment or remedial measures that could have been installed if there's a clear collision pattern showing angle collisions or a pattern of angle collisions, that something that could be identified. But often for a curve like this, proper delineation should be sufficient. But for some type of intersection, it could be something we indicate in for some sort of a forensic analysis like that.
The another aspect of that is when we propose roundabout, it may be safe for vehicles, but usually the pushback is roundabout is not safe for active transportation, that is for biking and pedestrians. So what is your take on that? And what is your suggestion to address, or how you take that comment?
Yeah, well, we see it a lot, right? And especially now with OTM book. Well, now we can install pedestrian crossovers at those roundabouts. It kind of addressed the issue that control crossing can also be provided. So I think that was one of the concern, is that pedestrian never have priority at a roundabout. So that right-of-way issue, I think, has been addressed. I don't know. I think there are some municipalities that have been quite successful with the implementation of roundabouts, and also it has shown that it has had safety benefits for pedestrians and cyclists. There are treatments that can be installed specifically to improve safety for them too. So yeah, is there anything you would like to add, Josée, on roundabout?
Nope, I think you summarized it well.
Okay, thank you. It was a nice presentation and case study. Okay, thank you once again.
Thanks.
I see a comment from Sean. Next, Sean, would you like to elaborate on your comment?
Yeah, if we're talking about my comment about developers in section 41, yeah, my opinion, and this goes back to my days in industry, is that existing conditions absolutely do not matter on a development. If they're proposing a change, then we're starting from ground zero, so nothing exists on the site. So access conditions apply, modifications to access conditions apply. If we want to leave the access as is, but ask for an access agreement registered on the title of the property so we can go in and change it later, that's certainly up for grabs. But there's really no basis for developers to dispute that because it's an existing condition means that they get to remain. There is no grandfathering conditions in the Ontario Planning Act for things like this. So that's where I stand by that comment.
Perfect.
Thank you, José and Alex, for answering those questions. And now let's move on to the fun part of this event, and that is the trivia game on transportation and traffic. As mentioned earlier, we'll be playing this game using Kahoot, and here are the rules for the game. To play, you will need two web-enabled devices. One device will be used to see the game code and the trivia questions, and the second device will be used to answer those questions. The second device can either be a cell phone, a tablet, or a laptop. For those of you who haven't used Kahoot before, I will explain the rules in detail. To start the game, I will provide you a game pin. A sample game pin is shown here, this one. And I will share the screen that will display the actual game pin. On the second device, enter kahoot.it into the browser. Then enter the game pin and your name to start playing the game. Look at the questions on device 1 and answer it by making the correct selection on device number 2. A sample of how the question screen looks is shown here on device number 1. Click on the correct color of the answer on device number 2. In simple terms, it's something like how you answer multiple choice questions in exams. You look at question on the question paper and then make the selection on the answer paper. So with that, let's start the game. This is the game pin you will be using to enter into kahoot.it. I will give 30 more seconds for anybody who is going to be clicking. Okay, let's start again. And here is the first question.
Start singing, Sean.
Not a chance.
Every single city of Hamilton employee should get this one right.
That was confusing.
Was there not an S missing in that?
That is a tough competition between Sean and Josée.
The micro machines was a nice touch, guys.
You didn't like Miso in there too?
And that is the last question.
Uh-oh.
Woo.
That's wonderful. I think that is Sean next, right?
So I guess I've restored everyone's confidence in Mohawk College curriculum. Is that it?
And
At least when you were teaching.
thank you to all who participated in the trivia game and also to the spectators. Our winner for today's game is Sean next, followed by Josée Dumont. And could you please identify who is dealer?
Darren Laurel. I guess I took the nickname thing a bit to heart.
And the second runner is Doreen. How do you pronounce it?
Was it me? I wasn't paying attention. It's Julia. Oh no, Josée.
No, the third one.
Darren, Laurel.
Yeah, Darren.
Darren. Okay. I'll thank the IT Hamilton Section Executive Committee for their effort in putting this together. And we are planning to organize our next speaker event, hopefully in person, towards the end of this year in December. We have made it through this pandemic and we are almost there. And till then, stay safe and healthy. Thank you and have a wonderful day.
Thanks for organizing, folks.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey Sheba, it's Julia here.
Thank you.
You guys recorded this. Are you going to post it or do you need us to post it for you?
Actually, once we get the approval from both the presenters, we will send it to Steven for uploading it.
Oh, perfect. You've already made those arrangements.
Yes.
That's great. So it'll be on the CIT YouTube channel probably.
It will. We will
Or
have
on
the
the
link
website.
For the IT Hamilton section on our website.
Perfect. Thanks very much. It was really great.
Well, thank you.